Hi Math 1, this is Miss V, and this is your long-awaited 3.5 video. I'm going to do a couple problems from the ready and the set portion of this exercise, and then ask you to finish following my example. I think the go portion is something that I'd like you to try on your own and see if it doesn't make sense to you, and we'll review it in class. So let's take a look at problem number 1. It says, given h of t, this function that they're calling h of t, it says find h of 4. And really, in order to figure this out, we need to know what they're asking us. And essentially what they're saying is, when x is negative 4, what is y? Remember, this is just a stand-in, that h of t is just a stand-in for a y value. So they're asking me, if you substitute a negative 4 for t, what do you get out for y? So we can do that. Y is equal to 2 times negative 4 minus 5. And then I just need to do a little bit of arithmetic. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. And negative 8 minus 5 is negative 13. So that is what y is when x is negative 4. Notice b is just a little bit different. They're already telling you, remember that's just a y, when y is equal to 23, what is t? When y is equal to 23, what is t? So let's do a substitution. We know y is 23, and it wants us to say what x is. So now I need to do some algebra and add 5 to both sides. And the last step to finding t would be to divide both sides by 2. So I get 14 for t. And that's just simply saying when my input value of is 14, I get an output value of 23. So I would like you to do C and D. C is just like A, and D is just like B, and see how they go. Let's take a look at number 2, because it's asking you the same kinds of questions, except this time it gives you a graph instead of an equation. So if it's asking me for g of 2 in problem number 2, if it's saying g of 2, it's saying what is y when x is 2? In other words, substitute a 2 for x and figure out what y is. And so if I put in a 2 for x and I go all the way up until I hit my function, I didn't draw that line very straight. Let me try that one more time. I put in a 2 for x and I go up until I hit my line. What I notice is when x is 2, y is 8. So g of 2 has to be 8. This is saying when y, remember g of x just means y, when y is equal to 3, what is x? So I'm going to go find a y value of 3. I'm going to use my straight edge here just so I can be precise. There's my y value of 3. When y is 3, x looks like it is 1. And then in this, you tell me, are we looking for an x value? Or did they give us an x value and we're looking for a y value? And then see if you can write this one. We haven't done that in class. It's a little tricky. But I think some of you are starting to kind of do this intuitively, and I'd like to see how it feels to you. The next problem I'd like to do is in the set portion of our exercises, and it says two functions are graphed. Graph a new function by adding the two functions together. So let's do the first one together. This basically says I'm going to take a function, f of x, and I'm going to take another function, g of x, and I'm going to add them together. Well, remember, f of x is just another way to say y. So I'm going to take the y value of one function and add it to the y value of the other function. And when I do, I get a whole new function that I'm going to call h of x. So let's take a look at our y values. If I look at f of x first, I'm going to look at 0, and I find that f of x, when f of x is, or when x is 0, f of x is 0. I have a point there at 0, 0. And now I'm going to find out what g of x is when my input is 0. And I'm just going to write that there to remind me that I'm looking for the same x value, but I'm getting two different y values because I have two separate functions here. So I put in 0 and I got out 0 for f of x, but when I put in 0 for g of x, I get out 2. And if I add those together, I get 2. So h of x has a point at 0, 2. Coincidentally, it's on g of x, and actually not coincidentally, but it's on g of x. The points, when you add them together, won't always be on one of the other functions, and we'll see that in the next couple of examples. Now I'm going to put in a value for x of -2. So my input is going to be -2. My output for f of x is going to be this point right here, which looks like it's 2 as well. You see that y value is a 2. I think I covered it up with my great big dot here, but it should be a 2 there. Sorry about that. Zuzu barks a lot. So I know what f of x is when my input is -2. I need to know what g of x is when my input is -2. So if I look at this line, it's halfway in between 0 and 2. So it looks like right there, there's a point at -2, 1. And so when I add those two together, I get -1. So h of x has a point with the input of -2 and the output of -1. So let's graph that point. -2, and that's going to be halfway in between 0 and -2. So let's see. It looks like it's there. So now let's do one more point just to verify. I mean, I could assume it's linear, and I could connect these 2 points like that. But I hate to make assumptions, and I want to verify that it really is linear. So I'm going to choose a point of 2, and I'm going to use that as my input. And I'm going to say, what is f of x when x is 2? And it would be -2. I think I've done something wrong. Because how can we have an input and the outputs? Yeah. Does that bother you too? It bothers me. So if I look at my previous example, what I did wrong was this is supposed to be a +2, isn't it? Yeah, my x value is -2, but my y value is a +2. So this should really be 3. In this picture, it looks different altogether, doesn't it? So my point is right here. I think I fixed that. I hope that wasn't too confusing. If it was, ask in class. So now I'm going to put in an input of 2. F of x is -2, and I'm pretty certain about that one. +2 is my x value, and -2 is my y value. And then I also need to know what g of x is, and it looks like g of x is at 3. So that gives me a y value of 1. That means h of x, when x is 2, y is 1. And that point would be right there. And I noticed that it was kind of intuitive in a certain way that we had a line But by plotting those 3 points, I've confirmed it. And I can label this guy h of x now. So give number 4 a try and see how it goes. Ask good questions in class. And that's it for 3.5.